Jack Reaper Malone was halfway through his second cup of black coffee when the world decided to lose its damn mind. It was a crisp April morning in Pinewood Estates, Virginia. A cul-de-sac so quiet you could hear a squirrel fart 2 lawns over. The sun was just peeking over the McMansions, glinting off Jack's gunmetal gray mailbox, when the rumble hit. At first, he thought it was a low-flying Black Hawk, old instincts from Fallujah kicking in. Then he saw them. A dozen Harleys tearing down the street like the 4 horsemen of the HOA apocalypse, leather vests flapping, exhaust pipes belching defiance. Jack set his mug down on the porch railing, squinting as the lead biker, a mountain of a man with a beard like a Brillo pad gone rogue, killed his engine 10 feet from Jack's perfectly mowed lawn. The guy's vest read Spike in jagged red letters, and his knuckles were tattooed with skulls. Behind him, the gang fanned out, boots crunching gravel, chains jangling like they'd raided a medieval dungeon's gift shop. Jack's first thought, this ain't about my mailbox, is it? His second, nah, it's definitely about the mailbox. Spike swung a leg off his bike, stomped forward, and jabbed a sausage-thick finger at Jack. You Malone? He growled, voice like a gravel truck stuck in first gear. Depends who's asking, Jack said, leaning back in his rocking chair. He'd faced down warlords with AK-47s and worse breath. This punk didn't even rate a raised pulse. Pinewood Estates HOA says your grass is 3/8 of an inch too tall. And that mailbox ain't beige. You got 24 hours to fix it, or we come back and break your knees. Spike cracked his knuckles for emphasis, grinning like he'd just invented intimidation. Jack blinked, then laughed. A dry, raspy chuckle that had unnerved tougher men than Spike. Let me get this straight. Karen Withers, 5'2", clipboard-wielding Karen, hired you clowns to play lawn police? What's next? She gonna send the Girl Scouts to enforce the no barbecue on Tuesdays rule? Spike's grin faltered. You think this is a joke, old man? We're the Iron Reapers. We don't mess around. Iron Reapers? Jack snorted. Sounds like a discount lawnmower brand. Tell you what, Spike, why don't you and your posse ride back to Karen? Tell her I said negative on the grass thing. Mailbox stays gray. Knees stay intact. Deal? Spike's face darkened. He took a step closer, looming over the porch. You're gonna regret that, tough guy. Jack didn't flinch. 30 years in Delta Force had taught him 2 things. Never back down from a bully, and always have a plan B. Right now, plan B was the K-bar knife tucked under his chair cushion. But he figured these bozos weren't worth the cleanup. Yet, the rest of the gang revved their engines, circling the cul-de-sac like vultures with a midlife crisis. A neighbor's curtain twitched, probably Tom, the retired cop across the street, wondering if he should grab popcorn or his Glock. Jack stood, stretching his 6-foot frame, scars from a dozen war zones flexing under his faded Metallica tee. He locked eyes with Spike. Tell you what, Jack said, voice low and steady. I've dodged IEDs, snipers, and dysentery that'd make you cry for your mama. You think I'm scared of a guy who gets his orders from a woman who alphabetizes her spice rack? Run along, son. Spike hesitated, then spat on the ground, missing Jack's lawn by an inch, which was a shame, because Jack would have enjoyed the excuse. 24 hours, Spike snarled, swinging back onto his bike. The gang roared off, leaving a cloud of exhaust and shattered suburban peace. Jack watched them go, then picked up his coffee. Cold now. Figures. He shook his head, muttering, HOA's got more firepower than the Taliban these days. That's when it hit him. This wasn't just about grass or a mailbox. This was Karen Withers, Pinewood's pint-sized dictator, flexing her petty empire. She'd been on his ass since he moved in 6 months ago. First it was the truck parked too close to the curb. Then the American flag he flew on Veterans Day, apparently too political. The mailbox was just her latest crusade. Hiring bikers, though, that was a new level of unhinged, even for her. He replayed the scene in his head, piecing it together. Karen's last violation notice, number 17, delivered via certified mail with a $50 fine, had threatened escalation if he didn't comply. He'd tossed it in the trash, figuring her idea of escalation was another passive-aggressive note taped to his door. Not a biker gang. Where'd she even find these guys? Craigslist? Wanted thugs for hire. Must intimidate retirees over landscaping disputes. Jack smirked, sipping his cold coffee. This was about to get fun. He'd spent decades outsmarting enemies who'd kill for less than a mailbox. Karen didn't know who she was messing with, but the real question was what came next. Spike said 24 hours. Would they roll back with crowbars? Molotovs? Or would Karen lawyer up, bury him in fines and liens like some HOA warlord? Hell, maybe she'd call in a drone strike, wouldn't put it past her. He glanced at the imaginary audience in his head. Old Delta buddies, probably laughing their asses off if they could see this. "All right, folks," he said aloud, grinning. "Think I'll let these clowns push me around? What do you reckon happens next? Drop your predictions in the comments. I'll read 'em while I decide whether to break out the MREs or the M4. Your call." Jack drained his mug and headed inside. The coffee maker hummed as he started a fresh pot. Whatever Karen and her leather-clad minions had planned, he'd be ready. Retirement was supposed to be quiet, grilling burgers, fishing, maybe a little woodworking. Instead, he was squaring off with a suburban tyrant and her biker army. Fine by him. The Reaper didn't back down. Not in Iraq, not in Virginia. And definitely not over a damn mailbox. Jack Reaper Malone was cleaning his K-bar knife on the porch. More for show than necessity, when the mail truck squeaked to a stop the next morning. The driver, a wiry guy named Pete who'd once confessed he feared Karen more than the IRS, tossed a thick manila envelope onto Jack's steps like it was a live grenade. "Certified mail, Malone?" Pete called, peeling out before Jack could ask questions. The envelope hit the ground with a thud heavy enough to wake a coma patient. Jack eyed it, then smirked. Here comes Karen's counterstrike. He sliced it open with the K-bar, revealing a 47-page violation packet so dense it could have doubled as a doorstop. The cover letter, typed in Comic Sans, because of course it was, bore Karen Withers' loopy signature and a Pinewood Estates HOA letterhead that screamed, "Designed by a scrapbooking addict." The first line hit like a sucker punch. "Mr. Malone, your continued defiance of HOA regulations has escalated to critical status. Enclosed are 17 violations, including grass height noncompliance and unapproved mailbox coloration. Pay $500 within 48 hours, or further action will be taken." Jack flipped through the pages. Photos of his offensive gunmetal gray mailbox. A ruler pressed to his lawn proving the 3/8-inch crime. Even a blurry shot of him flipping off the HOA's security camera. Classy. He leaned back in his rocking chair, chuckling. Further action? What's she gonna do? Send Spike back with a weed whacker? But the packet's heft told him Karen wasn't playing small ball anymore. This was a paperwork ambush, a bureaucratic IED designed to bury him in fines and legalese. He'd seen this tactic before. Taliban commanders drowning U.S. forces in fake surrenders to stall ops. Karen was no Mullah Omar, but she had the same knack for petty warfare. Jack hauled the packet inside to his command center. A basement lair with a battered desk, a flickering fluorescent light, and shelves of surplus gear he'd liberated from Uncle Sam. He spread the pages out like a battle map, sipping a fresh coffee as he dug in. The HOA bylaws were tucked in the back, a 72-page monstrosity of fine print that'd make a lawyer weep. Jack skimmed it, zeroing in on section 14.3. Fines exceeding $100 require a board hearing unless emergency conditions apply. No hearing notice in the packet. Then section 19.1. HOA funds may not be used for external enforcement without member vote. Hiring bikers sure as hell sounded external, and Jack hadn't seen a ballot lately. "Gotcha, Karen," he muttered, grabbing a notepad. Virginia state law backed him up too. HOAs couldn't just sling fines like this without due process. He'd dealt with enough JAG officers to know the drill. Karen's little empire was overreaching, and Jack smelled blood in the water. He fired off a response, keeping it short and sweet, Delta style. To Karen Withers, HOA Tyrant-in-Chief. Your biker goons and $500 shakedown. Violation packet received. Your bylaws and state law say you're full of it. Suggest you stand down before I escalate. Regards, Jack Malone. He printed it, signed it in black Sharpie, and stuffed it in an envelope addressed to her McMansion 3 streets over. No stamp. Let her pay the postage when Tom dropped it off later. Revenge, step 1. Jack figured that'd buy him a day to plan. He underestimated her. By dusk, his doorbell cam pinged. Spike was back, alone this time, lumbering up the driveway with a smirk. The footage caught it all. Spike slapping a neon orange final notice sticker on Jack's front door, then growling into the camera. Pay up, or we burn this dump down tomorrow night. Karen says hi. He kicked over Jack's trash can for good measure before peeling out on his Harley. Jack replayed the clip, grinning like a kid on Christmas. Burn it down? Over a mailbox? Oh, Karen, you've got balls bigger than your head. He saved the video to a USB drive, evidence for later, and sipped his coffee, now spiked with a splash of bourbon. Spike's threat was the mini hook he'd been waiting for. Karen wasn't just flexing. She was going all in, and Jack loved an enemy who overplayed their hand. He leaned back, mind racing. The $500 was chump change. He'd spent more on ammo for a single op, but this wasn't about money. It was about principle. Karen had turned his retirement into a war zone, and Jack didn't lose wars. He'd survived ambushes in Kandahar with less intel than this. Spike's biker buddies were muscle, sure, but sloppy, loud pipes and louder mouths. Karen, though? She was the brains, or at least the ego, and that made her dangerous in a suburban sociopath kind of way. Jack glanced at the HOA packet again, flipping to a grainy photo of his truck parked an inch past the curb line. Critical violation, it read. He laughed out loud. Critical? I've had hangnails more critical than this crap. That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't just mad about the grass or the mailbox. This was personal. Maybe it was the time he'd told her, at the last HOA meeting he'd bothered attending, that her no flags rule was dumber than a bag of hammers. Or maybe she'd Googled him, found out he'd once stared down a militia leader without blinking, and decided he was a threat to her clipboard kingdom. Either way, the gauntlet was down. Jack cracked his knuckles, already plotting. He could rig the yard with some non-lethal surprises. Maybe those sprinklers he'd been meaning to fix, hooked to a dye pack. Or dust off the air raid siren from his Delta stash. Give Spike's crew a taste of real noise. But first, he'd let Karen stew. That letter would hit her mailbox tomorrow, and he'd bet his last MRE she'd escalate again. Jack raised his mug to the empty room. Here's to you, Karen. You wanted a fight? You're about to get the Reaper. He took a long sip, savoring the burn. Round 2 was coming, and he'd be damned if he let a biker or a bureaucrat take him down. Jack Reaper Malone wasn't asleep when the clock struck midnight, just resting his eyes, Delta style, with one hand on the K-bar under his pillow and the other itching for action. The first clue something was up was the faint crunch of gravel outside. Quieter than a Harley's roar, but louder than a raccoon rummaging through trash. He rolled out of bed, silent as a ghost, and flicked on the basement monitors. The grainy night vision feed showed 3 figures creeping across his lawn. Spike and 2 of his Iron Reaper buddies, decked in black hoodies like they'd watched one too many heist movies. Jack grinned. Recon night. Huh? Let's give him a welcome. The mini hook hit when Spike tripped over Jack's garden hose, sprawling face first into the mulch with a muffled curse. The other 2 froze, one whispering, "Shut up, man. He'll hear us." Too late. Jack was already in his command center, a half-eaten MRE on the desk and a plan forming faster than you could say, HOA violation. These clowns weren't here to burn the place down. Not yet. This was intel gathering, probably Karen's orders to scope his defenses before the big move. Amateur hour. Jack had rigged the yard that afternoon. Figuring Spike's burn it down threat wasn't just bluster. The sprinklers, repaired with a little DIY ingenuity, now doubled as a trap, hooked to a remote trigger and a tank of red food dye he'd nabbed from a surplus store. Non-lethal, humiliating, and perfectly legal under Virginia's stand-your-ground vibes. He watched the trio slink closer, Spike brushing dirt off his vest, muttering about that old bastard. Jack hit the button. The sprinklers erupted with a hiss, drenching the bikers in a crimson shower that'd make a horror flick jealous. Spike yelped, flailing as the dye soaked his beard, turning him into a soggy, red-bearded Santa Claus. The other two bolted, one slipping on wet grass and landing ass-first in Jack's rose bushes. Thorns snagged leather, and the guy's howl echoed down the cul-de-sac. Jack cackled, zooming the camera in for posterity. "Smile, boys. You're on Reaper TV." The trio stumbled back to their bikes, parked a block over like they thought Jack wouldn't notice. Red dye dripped off Spike's vest, pooling on the pavement as he roared, "I'm gonna kill him!" His buddies, now resembling drowned clowns, yanked him onto his Harley. They peeled out, engines screaming, leaving a trail of soggy dignity behind. Jack saved the footage, Exhibit B for the inevitable showdown, and leaned back, sipping cold coffee. "Recon's over, Spike. Hope you brought a change of clothes." The basement glowed with the hum of his gear, old radios, a dented ammo crate repurposed as a footrest, and a faded photo of his Delta squad pinned to the wall. Jack glanced at it, imagining his old crew's reactions. "What's that, Reaper?" he could hear Martinez saying. "HOA sent bikers and you painted 'em red? You're losing your edge." Nah, Jack thought. This was just foreplay. Karen wanted war, and he'd give her one she'd never forget. He replayed the night in his head, piecing it together. Spike's crew wasn't smart, loud, sloppy, and dumber than a sack of hammers. But they were persistent. That meant Karen was footing the bill and she wasn't cheap. Where was the money coming from? The HOA dues barely covered the community pool's chlorine tablets. Jack's gut said there was more to this, and his gut hadn't failed him since that ambush in Mosul. A knock at the front door snapped him out of it. He grabbed the K-bar, easing upstairs to peek through the blinds. It was Tom, the retired cop from across the street, bundled in a robe and holding a thermos. Jack let him in, smirking. "Saw the light show, huh?" Tom handed over the thermos. "Hot coffee, bless him," and shook his head. "Looked like a damn crime scene out there. You okay?" "Better than Spike," Jack said, pouring a cup. "They tripped my sprinklers. Red dye. Should have seen them run." Tom laughed, then sobered. "Listen, Jack, I heard something at the VFW last week. Karen's tight with Vince Russo, that developer who's been buying up foreclosures around here. Word is, he's bankrolling some muscle to keep folks in line. Those bikers might be his." Jack's jaw tightened. Vince Russo name rang a bell. Local paper had run a piece last year about his shady land grabs, skirting zoning laws to flip houses for profit. If Russo was in bed with Karen, this wasn't just about grass height anymore. It was a power play, and Jack's defiance was a wrench in their gears. "Explains the budget for leather vests," Jack said, sipping the coffee. "Thanks, Tom. Keep your ears open." Tom nodded, heading out. "Don't get yourself arrested, Reaper. Or do. I'd pay to see Karen's face in court." Jack locked the door, mind racing. Russo meant deeper pockets, maybe bigger threats. He'd humiliated Spike's crew tonight, but they'd be back. Angrier, dumber, and probably armed with more than bravado. Fine by him. He'd outsmarted insurgents with less effort than this HOA circus. The dye trap was a warning shot. Next time, he'd escalate. Maybe that air raid siren or the flashbangs he'd stashed in the garage. Non-lethal, sure, but loud enough to make Spike piss his chaps. He glanced at the monitor, the red-stained lawn glowing under the moon. "Round 3, Karen," he muttered. "Your move." Jack finished his coffee, savoring the quiet before the storm. Retirement was supposed to be boring, grilling steaks, not bikers. But if Karen and Russo wanted to dance, the Reaper was ready to lead. Jack, Reaper Malone, strode into the Pinewood Estates Community Center like he was storming a hostile compound. A stack of legal documents under one arm and a GoPro clipped to his chest streaming live to his old Delta buddies. The HOA board meeting was in full swing, and the mini hook hit when Karen Withers, perched at the head table like a suburban Sauron, spotted him and dropped her gavel mid-sentence. Her face went whiter than her bleached bob, eyes bugging out as Jack dropped a bombshell. "Evening, folks. Got some evidence your president's been hiring bikers to shake me down. Who wants to see the receipts?" The room, 24 homeowners, half asleep over stale donuts and decaf, snapped to life. Karen's clipboard clattered to the table, and her toady, a sweaty guy named Gary with a comb over you could see from orbit, choked on his coffee. Jack tossed his packet onto the front table. A curated remix of her 47-page violation screed, highlighted bylaws, and a USB drive labeled Reaper's Greatest Hits. He'd spent the morning after the red dye sprinkler stunt digging deeper, and what he'd found was pure gold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack said, voice calm but carrying like he was briefing a squad, "your HOA's been playing dirty. Section 19.1 of the bylaws says no funds for external enforcement without a vote. Karen here skipped that step when she hired the Iron Reapers to threaten me over a mailbox." He held up a grainy still from his doorbell cam. Spike slapping the final notice sticker on his door, snarling about burning it down. The crowd gasped. A guy in the back, probably Dave, who'd gotten fined for a kiddie pool last summer, muttered, "What the hell?" Karen recovered, slamming her gavel like she was auditioning for Judge Judy. "This is outrageous. Mr. Malone, you're out of order. You've been cited for 17 violations, including 3/8 of an inch of grass?" Jack cut in, grinning. "Yeah, I read your novel. But let's talk about Virginia Code 55.1 to 1819. Fines over $100 need a hearing. Where's mine, Karen?" He flipped open his packet, revealing a highlighted page. "Or how about fiduciary duty? You're spending HOA dues on biker muscle while the clubhouse roof leaks. That's not just sloppy. It's illegal." The room erupted. Dave stood, waving a crumpled fine notice. "She charged me $200 for a basketball hoop. Where's my hearing?" Others chimed in. Complaints about broken sprinklers, banned holiday lights, even a guy who got dinged for excessive dog barking. Jack leaned against a wall, letting the chaos build. He'd seen this in war zones. Give people a spark and they'll burn the house down themselves. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to regain control. "This is a lawful board. Mr. Malone's a menace. His truck, his flag, his attitude. The bikers were community safety contractors." The lie landed like a wet fart. Gary nodded frantically, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Jack hit play on his phone, streaming the GoPro feed to a projector someone had left on. Spike's face filled the screen, growling, "Pay up, or we burn this dump down." "Karen says hi." Boos echoed. Karen's jaw dropped, and Jack swore he saw her sole exit stage left. "Contractors, huh?" Jack said, smirking. "Funny, I didn't see thug rental in the budget." "Care to explain, Madam President?" He tossed the USB drive onto the table like a grenade. "Got more footage. Your boys tripping my sprinklers last night. Dyed redder than a baboon's ass. Wanna watch?" The crowd roared, half laughter, half rage. A woman in yoga pants yelled, "I'm done with this crap. My dues pay for that." Dave started chanting, "Resign! Resign!" Karen's eyes darted to the exit, but Jack wasn't done. He held up a printout of an email he'd found buried in a public records request. Karen to a guy named Vince Russo, promising compliance in exchange for support. Tom's tip about the developer was paying off. "Russo's bankrolling your goons, isn't he?" Jack said, voice low but deadly. "What's the deal, Karen? He wants my lot for a flip? Or you just hate my mailbox that much?" He didn't expect an answer. She was too busy hyperventilating. But the crowd ate it up. Gary tried to speak, stammering about procedural errors. But someone threw a donut at him. It missed sadly. Karen finally snapped, grabbing her purse and storming toward the door. "This meeting's adjourned. You'll hear from my lawyer, Malone." She shoved past Jack, leaving a trail of Chanel No. 5 and desperation. The room cheered as the door slammed, but Jack stayed quiet, watching her go. He knew that look, cornered, not defeated. She'd come back swinging and he'd be ready. Tom sidled up, clapping Jack's shoulder. "Hell of a show, Reaper. You sure you're retired?" "Starting to wonder," Jack said, unplugging the GoPro. His phone buzzed. Texts from his Delta buddies watching the stream. "Karen's toast." Martinez wrote, "Bet she sends tanks next." Jack chuckled, pocketing the device. The meeting broke up, homeowners buzzing, some shaking his hand like he'd liberated a village. Dave slipped him a beer from a cooler under the table. To freedom, man. Jack cracked it open, savoring the cold fizz. He'd bloodied Karen's nose tonight, but Russo's shadow loomed. The developer wouldn't take this lying down, and neither would his biker puppets. Jack's lawn was safe for now, but the war was heating up. He glanced at the USB drive still on the table. Round 4 was coming, and the Reaper was just getting warmed up. Jack, Reaper Malone, was frying bacon at dawn, the sizzle drowning out the morning news, when a black SUV rolled up his street like a predator stalking prey. The mini hook hit as the vehicle stopped dead in front of his house, disgorging 2 hulks in cheap suits. Ex-cons by the look of their neck tattoos and the way they moved, all swagger and no finesse. One carried a baseball bat, the other a smirk that said he'd broken more than kneecaps in his day. Jack flipped the bacon, muttering, "Guess Karen's out of bikers." He didn't rush, let him sweat. The bigger one, a slab of meat with a shaved head and a scar splitting his eyebrow, banged on Jack's door hard enough to rattle the hinges. "Malone, open up, or we come in." His buddy, wiry with a gold tooth glinting in the sunrise, twirled the bat like he was auditioning for the Yankees. Jack strolled over, K-bar tucked in his waistband, and cracked the door just enough to lean out. "Morning, fellas. HOA send you about my grass again?" Scarface sneered, stepping close enough for Jack to smell his cheap cologne. Dollar store Old Spice knockoff. "Name's Tony. This is Ray. We're with Vince Russo. He says drop the HOA fight or we burn your house down. No bikers this time, just us." Ray tapped the bat on the porch, chipping the paint Jack hadn't bothered fixing since Karen's last fine. Jack raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Burn it down? That's Spike's line. Russo's recycling threats now? Tell him to get creative." "I'm bored." He'd pegged Russo after Tom's tip and a late-night Google dive. Vince Russo, sleazy developer, known for snapping up foreclosures and strong-arming holdouts. The local paper had him tied to a zoning scam in 23. Greased palms and bulldozed lots. If he was bankrolling Karen, Jack's cul-de-sac was probably next on his flip list. Tony loomed closer, breath like a landfill on fire. "You think you're funny, old man? Last warning. Back off or you're ash." Ray swung the bat into Jack's mailbox. Gunmetal gray and still standing, denting it with a clang. Jack didn't flinch, just memorized their faces. Delta training. Know your enemy, then ruin their day. "Appreciate the heads up," Jack said, voice flat. "Now get off my porch before I escalate." He shut the door, slow and deliberate, letting the lock click like a promise. The SUV peeled out, tires squealing, and Jack watched through the blinds as they vanished. Bacon was burning now, damn it, but he had bigger fish to fry. He hit the basement, flipping on the monitors. The doorbell cam caught Tony's ugly mug and Ray's bat stunt. More ammo for the war chest. Jack wasn't surprised Russo had upped the game. The HOA meeting had painted a target on his back. Karen was a puppet, Russo the puppeteer, and these goons were the muscle. Fine. Jack loved a challenge, kept the blood pumping. He'd prepped for this after the biker recon flop. The yard was a minefield now. Non-lethal, of course, since he wasn't looking to explain bodies to the cops. Garden gnomes hid flashbangs from his Delta stash, wired to a remote. Sprinklers were reloaded with dye, this time blue for variety. He'd even rigged a motion sensor to blare Sweet Caroline at 120 decibels. Nothing lethal, just soul-crushing. If Tony and Ray came back, they'd leave crying. Jack uploaded the SUV footage to the neighborhood Facebook group, captioning it, "Russo's boys paid me a visit. Anyone else get the bat treatment?" Within minutes, replies flooded in. Dave griping about a slashed tire after the meeting. Yoga pants lady claiming her garage got tagged with spray paint. Russo wasn't just after Jack. He was cracking down on the whole rebellion. The group chat lit up with outrage and Jack grinned. "Keep 'em mad," he muttered. Angry neighbors were his best weapon. By noon, he'd cross-checked Russo's MO with public records, liens, lawsuits, a foreclosure on Tom's old buddy's place 2 miles over. The guy played dirty but sloppy, leaving paper trails a mile wide. Jack printed a stack, plotting his next move. When the doorbell cam pinged again, he tensed, K-bar in hand, then relaxed. It was Tom, thermos in tow, looking grim. "Caught wind of Russo's goons," Tom said, stepping inside. "Heard him bragging at the gas station. Say they're hitting you tonight. Something about teaching the old bastard a lesson." Jack poured coffee, smirking. "Let him try. I've got surprises ready." He showed Tom the gnome setup on the monitor, earning a belly laugh. "Flashbangs in the yard? You're a lunatic, Reaper." "Effective lunatic," Jack corrected. "Russo wants a war, he'll get one. Just gotta keep it legalish." Tom nodded, sipping. "Watch your six. Russo's got cash, and those punks looked meaner than Spike's crew." "Mean don't mean smart," Jack said. "Thanks, Tom. Beer's on me when this is over." Alone again, Jack prepped. He dragged a lawn chair to the porch, sipping bourbon-laced coffee as dusk fell, waiting. Tony and Ray would come, too dumb not to, and he'd be ready. The neighborhood was buzzing now, thanks to the Facebook post. Russo's intimidation was backfiring, turning Pinewood into a powder keg. Jack loved it. He'd faced worse odds in Fallujah with less backup. Headlights flashed down the street, SUV, not Harleys. Jack set the mug down, fingers brushing the remote in his pocket. "Round 5, Russo," he muttered. "Let's dance." The Reaper wasn't just defending his house anymore. He was taking the fight to the enemy, one flashbang at a time. Jack, Reaper Malone, was nursing a bourbon on his porch as dusk settled over Pinewood Estates, the air thick with the promise of chaos, when the roar of Harleys shattered the calm. The mini-hook hit as Spike's Iron Reapers rolled in, a dozen strong, circling his cul-de-sac like a pack of rabid wolves on wheels. Engines revved, beer cans flew, and Spike himself dismounted, hurling a Molotov cocktail that fizzled out on Jack's lawn. Poorly made, naturally. Jack smirked, flipping a switch on the remote in his pocket. A deafening air raid siren screamed to life from his roof, rattling windows and sending Spike stumbling back with a yelp. "Welcome to the party, boys," Jack muttered. The neighborhood froze. Curtains twitched, porch lights flickered on. But Jack was in his element. The siren, a relic from his Delta days, was loud enough to wake the dead, or at least make Spike wish he were. The bikers scattered, some covering their ears, others chucking more cans that clattered harmlessly off Jack's siding. Spike regained his footing, red-dyed beard glowing under the streetlights, and bellowed, "You're done, Malone. Russo says this ends tonight." Jack leaned back in his chair, sipping his drink. "Loud pipes, small brains," he said to no one. "Time to escalate." He'd prepped for this after Tony and Ray's morning visit. Russo's goons hadn't shown yet, but Spike's crew was the opening act. The yard was a fortress. Flashbang gnomes, blue-dye sprinklers, and now the siren blaring like a banshee on steroids. Jack hit another button, and the sprinklers kicked on, dousing the bikers in a sapphire flood. Spike roared, slipping in the wet grass, while two others crashed their bikes into Tom's mailbox across the street. Jack laughed so hard he nearly spilled his bourbon. Karen's budget cuts showing. Can't even afford competent thugs. The siege was sloppy but relentless. Spike rallied his crew, now dripping blue and half-deaf, and they lobbed rocks at Jack's windows. Most missed, plinking off the roof. Jack stayed cool, watching via his basement feed when the doorbell cam caught a new player. Tony's black SUV creeping up the block. Russo's muscle was joining the fray. Jack cracked his knuckles. 2-for-1 special. Nice. He slipped inside, locking the door, and flipped on the full arsenal. Motion sensors triggered Sweet Caroline at ear-bleeding volume. BABABA. Overlapping the siren in a sonic hellscape. A flashbang gnome detonated as Tony stepped onto the lawn, blinding him and Ray mid-stride. They flailed, Ray swinging his bat into thin air, Tony tripping over a garden hose. Spike's bikers froze, caught between fleeing and fighting, their tough guy act crumbling under the chaos. Jack watched from the basement, sipping a fresh coffee. Bourbon cut for focus now. The neighborhood was waking up. Tom's porch light blazed, and Dave's pickup screeched into his driveway, the guy leaping out with a baseball bat of his own. "Get M, Jack!" Dave yelled, waving at the house. Yoga Pants Lady live streamed from her window, shouting, "This is insane!" Jack grinned. Pinewood was a powder keg, and he'd just lit the fuse. Then it went sideways. A biker fired a flare gun, drunk or dumb, Jack couldn't tell, setting Tom's bushes ablaze. Jack cursed, grabbing a fire extinguisher from the garage. He darted out, dousing the flames as Spike charged him. Fists up, Jack sidestepped, Delta reflexes kicking in, and planted a boot in Spike's gut, sending him sprawling into the wet grass. "Stay down, Santa," Jack growled, extinguisher still in hand. Spike wheezed, blue dye streaking his face, out cold. Tony and Ray recovered, stumbling toward Jack, but the flashbangs had dulled their edge. Ray swung wild, missing by a mile. Jack ducked and cracked the extinguisher across his knee, dropping him. Tony lunged, snarling, "Russo's gonna bury you." Jack sidestepped again, letting Tony's momentum carry him into a gnome. Boom! Another flashbang. Tony hit the ground, clutching his eyes out of the fight. The bikers broke, half riding off, the rest staggering after Spike, who'd crawled to his Harley. Sirens, real ones, wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. Jack dusted his hands, stepping over Tony's groaning form, and waved at Tom, who joined Dave on the street. "Nice timing," Tom shouted, grinning. Cops rolled up minutes later. 2 squad cars, lights flashing. Jack met them on the porch, hands up, calm as ever. "Evening, officers. Just defending my property." Tom vouched fast. "He's good. Those punks started it. Russo's behind this." The lead cop, a grizzled guy Jack pegged as ex-military, eyed the blue-stained lawn and unconscious goons. "Looks like a damn war zone. Got proof." Jack handed over a USB drive, footage from the night, plus the SUV clip. "All yours. Check Karen Withers and Vince Russo too. HOA's dirty." The cop nodded, cuffing Tony and Ray as medics hauled Spike off. The remaining bikers were long gone, engines fading into the night. Jack leaned against the railing, adrenaline fading. The house stood, mailbox dented but defiant, grass still too tall by Karen's measure. Neighbors clapped from their porches, Dave hoisting his bat like a trophy. Jack raised his coffee mug in salute. Russo had thrown everything at him. Bikers, goons, flares, and lost. But this was the climax, not the end. Karen and Russo would regroup, and Jack knew it. He glanced at the cop cars pulling away, Tony glaring from the back seat. "Round 6 down," Jack muttered. "1 to go." The Reaper wasn't done. Russo's reckoning was coming, and Jack would deliver it with a grin. Jack Reaper Malone woke to a quiet Pinewood Estates the morning after the siege. The cul-de-sac littered with blue dye, beer cans, and the faint echo of Sweet Caroline still ringing in his ears. He brewed coffee, strong and black, and stepped onto the porch to survey the wreckage. His mailbox stood, dented but proud, a middle finger to Karen's empire. The cops had hauled off Tony, Ray, and Spike, but Jack knew Russo wouldn't quit. The climax was brewing, and he'd end it on his terms. By noon, the neighborhood buzzed. Dave and Yoga Pants Lady, real name Susan, knocked on his door, armed with coffee cake and a plan. "We're done with Karen," Dave said, crumbs flying. "Let's sue the HOA out of existence." Susan nodded, phone in hand. "I've got 30 neighbors on board after last night's live stream. Russo's toast too." Cops found burner phones in the SUV linking him to Spike. Jack grinned, sipping his coffee. "Class action, huh? Count me in. But first, let's flush him out." He'd saved the best for last. After the siege, Jack had rigged one final trap. Smoke grenades and glitter bombs, wired to a drone he'd tweaked in the basement. Non-lethal, humiliating, and guaranteed to make Russo's goons regret their life choices. He'd also mailed a tip to the feds that morning. Russo's foreclosure scam stank of racketeering, and Jack's USB footage was the cherry on top. The Reaper didn't just defend. he destroyed. Dusk fell, and headlights glared down the street. Russo's last stand. 2 SUVs screeched up, disgorging Spike's remaining bikers and a fresh pair of enforcers. Russo himself in the back barking orders. Karen's Prius trailed behind, her clipboard visible through the windshield. Jack watched from the porch, drone remote in hand, and hit the button. Smoke grenades popped, blanketing the lawn in gray haze. Then glitter bombs rained down. Pink and gold sparkles sticking to leather and suits like a disco nightmare. Spike coughed, swinging blindly, while an enforcer tripped over a gnome, triggering a final flashbang. Boom, blinded and sparkling. The crew stumbled like clowns at a rave. Jack stepped forward, K-bar gleaming in the porch light. Evening, Vince. Karen. Told you to stand down. Russo, a squat guy in a cheap suit now dusted with glitter, snarled from the SUV. You're dead, Malone, Karen shrieked. You've ruined everything. Jack laughed, dry and sharp. Nah, you did that yourselves. Neighbors poured out. Dave with his bat, Susan filming, Tom waving a shotgun for effect. The bikers froze, outnumbered and ridiculous, glitter clinging to their beards. Russo's enforcers bolted, piling into one SUV and peeling out, leaving Spike's crew to scatter on foot. Russo gunned his engine, but Jack's drone swooped low, dropping a last glitter bomb through the open window. Russo swerved, crashing into Karen's Prius, airbags popping as glitter filled the cab. She screamed, flailing in a sparkling cloud, while Russo coughed, trapped. Cops rolled in. Same grizzled officer from last night, now with feds in tow. Malone, the cop said, eyeing the chaos. You're a menace, Jack shrugged. Self-defense, officer. Check the footage. Susan handed over her live stream. The feds cuffed Russo, reading him his rights, racketeering, extortion, the works. Karen sobbed as a deputy hauled her out, glitter-streaked and defeated, her clipboard confiscated as evidence. The HOA crumbled fast. Jack's class action suit, filed with Dave and Susan, hit the courts the next week. 47 homeowners versus Pinewood Estates, citing bylaws violations and Russo's dirty money. A judge froze the HOA's accounts. Karen sold her McMansion to cover legal fees, fleeing to a condo in Florida. Russo's empire collapsed. Feds seized his properties, and he faced 20 years. Spike and the bikers took plea deals, ratting out both for reduced sentences. Jack celebrated on his porch a month later, bourbon in hand, mailbox still gunmetal gray. Neighbors toasted him, Tom with a beer, Dave with a Reaper Rules t-shirt he'd printed. Susan's live stream had gone viral, dubbed Glittergate online, earning Jack a cult following among HOA haters nationwide. He kept the lawn 3/8 of an inch too tall, just because he could. The twist came as he fired up a Zoom call with his Delta squad, recounting the saga. Bikers, goons, glitter, all of it. Martinez roared, wiping tears. Reaper, you're a lunatic. Write a damn book. Lopez chimed in. Title it HOA Hell, One Man's War. I'd buy it. Jack smirked, raising his glass. Maybe I will, boys. Beats fishing. He signed off, leaning back as crickets chirped. The cul-de-sac was quiet again. Grill smoke wafted from Tom's yard. No fines in sight. Retirement was finally his, earned with a K-bar and a drone. Russo and Karen wanted a war. They got the Reaper, and he danced on their graves with a glitter-dusted grin. To freedom, he toasted the night, sipping deep. The mailbox gleamed, a monument to victory.